presence of the U.S. Air Force Base where Roger Folston was at, okay? The presence of that entire unit at his funeral indicates the kind of honorable young man he was. So it's not even about questioning what kind of person Roger Folston was. The entire United States of America, through their military base where he was at, that knew him best, already testified what kind of individual he was. But is it just people testifying for Roger? The video where that savage murdered him also testifies the kind of person that Roger Folston was. In that video, Roger Folston gave the person behind the door the benefit of a doubt by opening the door without ever raising his arm, or if you will, his gun, okay? He never raised it because he figured there was a human being behind the door and he was going to give that human being a chance. But the savage who was behind the door never gave him a chance as a human being. You see? The mad animal behind the door, immediately upon his opening the door, seeing a black man holding a gun, gave him 6 shots. Not one, 6. And even one was not necessary for a human being to pull that trigger if you are a trained deputy. Not even just a trained regular police officer. You are a trained deputy. And this is going to be where blame needs to be placed in, okay? If you are a trained deputy and you are trained to protect the citizens of your city, then you should be trained that this citizen may have had a gun for purposes other than to commit crime. And therefore, you should have protected that citizen prior to protecting yourself. That trained deputy protected himself prior to protecting the citizen with the gun. And with a simple word, you would not have caused any physical harm. With a simple phrase, put your gun down. Put your gun down. 4 syllables. 4 syllables. Put your gun down. Guys, how many seconds does it take to say put your gun down versus the seconds it took for that savage to kill Roger Thompson? How many seconds does it take? Okay? But no, he was thinking about his life. And he saw a black man with a gun. And therefore, he did not think about that life of that young man. And it had to be under humiliation and shame. Okay? Now, he's put to shame. He's put to shame. I am glad that he chose a man who was going to stand so honorably, one who swore to protect. And Roger Folston died protecting the blacks of America, the black young men, because Roger Folston manifested how much of a gentleman he was and giving that savage the benefit of a doubt, while the savage did not give him a second of a doubtful benefit as soon as he noticed a black man holding a gun. Did I call him racist? No, I can't say he's racist, because we can easily say that he was paranoid, he was demented, he's a mental maniac. Why did they give such a maniac a gun? Okay, so he doesn't have to be racist because he could have done it to a white man. But the question is, would he have asked a white man to put the gun down before he shot 6 times? Okay? Would he have considered a white man with his gun down in his apartment, opening the door, okay, more of a human being than he thought of that honorable prince? Prince of the century is Roger Folston, okay? The prince of the century. What an honorable young man he was, just as he stood and died with dignity. Dignity. He never, ever fought that man. He was surprised and shocked when the savage shot him. He was surprised and shocked, and still he held no anger as he responded on the floor, wounded. He responded to that savage. He responded like an educated young man to prove to the savage that he was human. But do savages recognize humans? We don't even believe that. Because those who judge by appearance, be it you're judging by the hair, be it you are judging by the color, okay, you may not be able to see the human being, the intelligence, the genius behind what you are misjudging. Okay? You may not. You may not. So this is what prejudice is. That man was not racist, maybe not, but that man was 100% prejudiced. He prejudged that young man as a criminal. He therefore removed all of his constitutional rights. Okay? He removed his right to life, which is the ultimate life right. He removed that right. And before he removed that right, he removed his freedom of speech. He removed his freedom of self-expression by asking him who he is, simply by asking him to put your gun down. That is where that officer went wrong. If that officer had asked, put your gun down, then we can say maybe he was not prejudiced. Maybe he was now reacting from what he saw Roger doing. But he never gave Roger the chance to show the character that he was in by asking him to put his gun down. So who is to blame? Should we blame that mad dog, savage? Should we blame him? Well, if he has any iota of human being in him, after what I saw he did, I'm like, who gave this man a gun? They should all be fired. That entire unit, whoever hired him, needs to be fired. Because you gave a weapon to a maniac, okay? To a maniac to go and kill rather than protect. And to kill those who are protecting us. So, Roger's death is symbolic that the enemy is not necessarily without, but the enemy is within. It's within. So the entire unit needs to be dismembered, okay? Because of that man. Because he should not have had a gun. That man should not be carrying a gun. Okay? If he even shot once, we can draw a case 6 times without ever getting a negative response from the victim. Never once did he get a negative response from Roger. Never. And that savage kept firing. Next, those prejudice. Now here are the racists, the ones who call the cops. That apartment complex where he was at. Now it mandates that Florida is at fault. Not only is Florida hiring officers or police officers that they are not properly training to understand the humans that they are protecting, and that before, like, they took an oath knowing that their lives is at fault. So if that man bothered to try to protect the human being that was in front of him, okay, he would have protected that human being against himself. And both of them would have been alive, but today both of them are dead. Okay? Roger has been buried. Okay? That deputy is buried alive. He is alive, but he buried himself when he killed Roger. He killed himself. He didn't know that he was killing himself. He thought he was saving his life, but he just killed himself. Okay? Because he should either get life imprisonment for that. Okay? Because those who have left their victims alive have gotten long-term imprisonment, not life. But he deserves life because he took a life. Life for life. All right? I'm not asking to kill him. He's already dead. All right? He already killed himself. With those 6 bullets, he not only killed Roger, he killed the savage within him. Because now he has to learn what is a human being. What is a human being? Okay? So the state of Florida is at fault because of Florida has a lot of such savages that they put out there, okay, that they call officers that are killing our black, not just black men, but our black people, not just youth. Okay, they are killing our people. They are not protecting us. So Florida needs to be sued, and Florida needs to be. Well, I am glad again that that savage did not kill just any ordinary citizen. That savage killed the property of the United States. That savage has robbed the United States of America of a very valuable property. So therefore, it is the duty of the federal government to thoroughly investigate not just that one little county in Florida. The entirety of Florida needs to be investigated for their racism. Because I'm going to tell you one thing. Florida is segregated. And that apartment complex that called, okay, to kill that and murder that young man, okay, without, how could you be in an apartment complex, okay, or a management of an apartment complex, you do not know your tenants? Is it because he is black that you would not know your tenants, to the fact that you would send a savage to murder him? So that apartment, so you do not belong in management. They should all be fired. The apartment complex should be handed to the mother of Roger Fortson as a shrine for her beloved son that they murdered by being prejudiced against her son, because it was their prejudice that caused them to set loose that hound on that young man, on that young prince who could have been president of the United States as he was serving his country well. And that is my opinion. First of all, the problem starts with the racists of the apartment complex. Because had it not been for them, they are the racists. Because you have somebody living with you, among you, and you send a savage. You don't even know he's by himself. You don't honor him enough to know that he is an honorable soldier who is fighting for the constitution of the country within which you live. To the point where you would set loose one of your savages that your state does not properly investigate, does not properly assess. Okay? The mental state of that man was not properly assessed, because had his mental state properly been assessed before he goes behind a gun, okay, they would have seen that he is not capable of carrying a gun. He is not capable of managing a gun. That was poor judgment that he made. Beyond poor judgment, because had he had good sense, after the first shot, when he would have noticed that the young man was bruised and the young man was held that section where he shot him. But no, he continued shooting him like a dog. And this is where the problem is with his state. He continued shooting him like a dog. That is wrong. That is so beyond wrongness that was done to that life, that God-given life that was smothered. So you smother his life, you kill your own. You kill your own, okay? So what can I say about that? I cannot feel sorry for you, because I heard this story over a week ago and I am still mourning after I saw the video. When I first heard it, it was just another story. But I became curious and I watched the video. It became home. It came home. It came home. That young man, I was a scholar in my youth. I was a scholar full of youth, 23 years old. 23 years old, full of youth. Champion of the Air Force of the United States of America? Oh, no. No. You want respect. You need to start hiring those of respect. You need to constantly monitor the mindset of these people who you are putting guns on to go and police your cities. You wanna be racist? It's better if those property managements practice their racist laws so that they can get in trouble by doing their racist things rather than so that they can kill people like they did to Roger Fortson. It would have been best rather than allowing a young black soldier to stay in your apartment without you ever knowing who he is, to the point where you would stereotype him like that. You should have just excluded him. Okay, so now your property needs to be closed. And it needs to be closed, even though if you guys hired this management, you should have been more cautious of who you hire as management, because he paid his rent. I'm sure he paid his rent on time. If he didn't, the military paid it for him, and he was paying it through his service. Okay? So you should have known who you are renting. You don't care to know who you are renting, but yeah, you get the money. So you need to reimburse every dime you receive of rent from Roger Fortson or from the military for Roger Fortson. And you need to be shut down as a property management. Fired, because you are not human. You need to understand the value of privacy. If you were human before you called the cops on him, since this was his apartment, all right, you would have gotten to know him. Before calling the cops on your tenants, you don't know your tenants, all right? If you thought he was such a nuisance, you would have found out about it before. When he goes to pay the rent, or you never knock on his door to find out who he is, you just call the cops on him just like that to disturb his peace. You should be fired. Property management, this was not even a neighbor. And even if it were a neighbor, okay, a neighbor should not be allowed to call the cops on a person just like that and for the cops to come with their guns in that person's property. Okay? There needs to be thorough investigation of who you're dealing with before you send your animals into our place of peace, into our haven, into our safe shelters and our fortresses. So before that man went in there with his gun, he should have been able to ask that management who lives there. And if the management could not produce who lives there, he should not have gone in, because that is a problem with that property management. If they could not produce who live in the apartment that they identified, then they're supposed to be fired. All of them fired, their company go down the drain, because that's a life you just took. That's a life. Rather you have no money so you guys can live on the street and be homeless, okay, than to keep killing people out of what? Quietness? You're gonna kill him. You killed a jewel for the United States Air Force. And that's the way it is. All right? So this is my view of the the savage, cold-blooded murder of Roger Fortson. And I might have more to say about it. Okay? I may have more to say about it. The property management should be fired. The building should be rendered to the mother of Roger Fortson. Florida needs to have a federal investigation of their entire police units, and the feds need to take control. When it comes to guns, I am not rooting for guns, okay? So this idea, he had a right to have a gun, Roger is a military personnel on active duty, so we understand that they fight and they use guns. But at the same time, his death, let Roger's death not become one. Even though Roger died by the gun, you do not use the same weapon against your enemy. Okay? Let Roger's death not be one to promote more guns on the streets of the U.S. Let his death be one to remove guns from the police officers and from the citizens. Because had there been no gun, Roger would have been alive today. That's my take. I don't know what yours is, all right? But guns are not necessary and to go to people's houses with. If you don't want guns in their houses, then don't go to their homes with guns either. All right? Eliminate guns. And that apartment in those apartment complexes, since they are an apartment complex, we can start eliminating guns. That's why you need to know who's renting from you, so that if you know you have a soldier, you know you have a soldier. This is a soldier. Don't kill soldiers. This is a highly decorated soldier. This is not just any soldier. This is not a soldier, we say, who deserted the military, one who doesn't know he wants to be there or not. This is a high-ranking soldier, senior airman. All right, 23 years old. He's been in the military maybe for his 5th year, active duty. Come on, America. Florida is very racist. Florida needs to be investigated. Due to this racism, it's very segregated. Because of the segregation,